So I don't know if you guys have heard about Black Myth Wukong or have been keeping up with it, but it is making the rounds on social media once again, and this time it's probably one of the craziest things to ever happen to the game, and one of the craziest things to ever happen to Steam, because as per PC Games, new Black Myth Wukong benchmark already bigger than most Steam games. How in the world does that even happen? Not only has Black Myth Wukong been sitting at the top of Steam sales charts all this time, but now they're showing up pretty much every other game in player count alone for something that you can't even play, and we're going to get into that right here. The free Black Myth Wukong benchmark already has more players than most other releases on Steam, and the game itself isn't even out yet. You have to understand, this is not a demo that people are engaging in. It's a benchmark, so it's technically a cutscene with a bunch of things happening on it that you're just sitting there watching for about 30 seconds to a minute to see if your computer can handle the cutscene without stuttering or having any sorts of performance issues. Black Myth Wukong isn't even out yet, as the writer says, and it's already amassed 80,000 concurrent players on Steam. Again, you can't play it. Game Science's Souls-like take on Journey to the West could very well be the most action-packed game in the genre since Sekiro, and while we wait for reviews to come in, a new PC benchmarking tool is proving exceedingly popular. So if you want to experience Black Myth Wukong's gorgeous world while making sure your PC can run the game at launch, this is for you. With the Black Myth Wukong release date mere days away, this new benchmark tool is the next best thing while we wait. And it goes on to say that the Souls-like game looks absolutely stunning with some incredible fur effects that are sure to push your PC as far as it can go. And it shows a screenshot here of all of the people that were sitting in this game at one time, at the all-time peak being 84,721. These are astronomical numbers that many games, and quite a few of which I've spoken of recently, have not been able to achieve, not even been able to come close to that number. This is probably tripling, quadrupling, and pentupling other numbers that I've talked about. Concord, for sure, they had like, what, 2,000 people? Star Wars Outlaws is definitely not getting this much attention, and this is pretty much a doubling of Mecha Break's player count on their open beta player test. What this tells me is that there are gamers all over the place that are keeping their close eye on this game from the Chinese developer Game Science. Black Myth Wukong has been incredibly popular for the longest time, and it's a single game from a developer who have been working on it for a good number of years now. It's just insane how many people are playing it. We've already run through the Black Myth Wukong benchmark tool ourselves and found it wanting, but that doesn't mean it's not popular at its peak, 85,000 concurrent players. We got to take a look at another window here. On SteamDB itself, 17,984 people in-app. That is extremely impressive. Even at such a low number on another website, still trumps most games that I've talked about, especially games that come from Sweet Baby Inc. or Sony or Microsoft that push this stuff. And even popular games like Helldivers 2 is nowhere close to these numbers right now, and especially since Helldivers 2 is on the decline as its player base has revolted against the developer, which we'll go over in just a few minutes. But all in all, it looks like the popularity for this game is skyrocketing. It's growing by the day, and it's been growing since even before this. There was this post from Grums back in June. Black Myth Wukong is now #1 on Steam's wishlist, beating out Monster Hunter Wilds and Space Marine 2 by nearly 5 times. It was #1 way back then. It's still at the top of the Steam sales charts. Probably one of the most anticipated games of the year. There are so many people in this benchmark right now. And as a reminder, you cannot play the game. This is just a benchmark. Black Myth Wukong being in the top 10 most played games on Steam right now just by releasing a benchmark tool. This is from Roberto. It's among the most played games. A benchmark, a little cutscene that you watch. How many thousands of people are interested in this game? They would rather be doing this than playing Helldivers 2 or playing any game that was made by Sweet Baby Inc., which is sad, of course, for them. These are insane numbers. I mean, it's almost close to Elden Ring's numbers, and the game isn't even out. How many people are going to play this when it releases? There were reporters that tried the Black Myth Wukong benchmark, so from what I'm seeing, you're going to get varied results with your PC. Depending on what you have, you could be running this game at 1440p 60 FPS, or you could be running it at 30 frames at 1080p. I'm sure that maneuver will affect some PCs, and they might even remove it a couple months after release. I know that that's something that's happened for other games in the past, but it might require a bit of player feedback. Now, if you have a PC that can generally run most things, you're probably not going to have a problem, not from what I've read at least, but reviewers say that they love the game. From Pirate Nation here, he goes over some things that reviewers have talked about when they were given the chance to review Black Myth Wukong. They say about 25 hours gameplay you're looking forward to, with a bunch of side content that you can apparently miss if you're not paying attention. And there are 50 transformations, which is what the core gameplay revolves around, having different combat techniques in different transformations that you acquire from bosses that you defeat. And this is just me educating you guys on how that game works. But from what I am seeing, people are responding positively to the game and even trying to stream it on Twitch. They're probably just streaming the benchmark, but that's still really impressive that they're even getting people to stream this benchmark just to get hype up for the game. But that's just a natural side effect of game developers focusing more on developing fun games rather than propaganda games. Gamers are going to naturally be drawn to you because you're trying to be entertaining and not a lecturer or a rewriter of history. Well, you guys don't think that this game is popular? Look at the Steam charts again. An hour ago, 30,218 people playing it on Steam. These numbers are pretty sporadic. I think that I'm actually glitching on this page here that I'm looking at, but I've already had several other sources confirm that there were 80,000 people at the all-time peak playing that benchmark. So on this benchmark, it's showing that the all-time peak was 47,941, but I promise you that is still far higher than a lot of very popular Steam games right now, including Helldivers 2, which is probably one of the most popular games on Steam this year. But they're suffering. They're suffering greatly. They've actually lost over 95% of their player base because they peaked at 458,208. Now they're sitting at 28,000, which is only half, or maybe just a little bit more than half, of Black Myth Wukong's benchmark tool on the Steam charts that are probably glitching. At the all-time peak on other sources, it's sitting at 80,000, which almost triples Helldivers 2 in its current state, which is crazy. This isn't even gameplay. I mean, there was a time when I really did advocate for the Helldivers 2 developers. I really did enjoy the game. When it first came out, it didn't have all of these glaring issues that it's dealing with right now, and it's now suffering from these issues that it refuses to resolve because the developers refuse to communicate with their player base that's been supporting them through all of these controversies. And it really is disappointing to see this game fail because of those things. At 458,208 players at its peak, this game was destined for success, yet before the year's end, it has lost so many players. Why is that? Well, there were so many updates put into this game that players did not ask for, and its most recent update that was dished out was pretty much the final nail in the coffin for a lot of their players. Helldivers 2 players may let Super Earth burn to protest controversial patch. So this new patch that they rolled out made a lot of changes that players did not like. They unleashed the escalation of Freedom update on August 6th to the delight of players. However, the excitement quickly escalated into resentment when the community realized the severity of the latest balance adjustments. They said the flame effects took the biggest hit, the grenade pistol and orbital 120mm HE barrage received nerfs, they kept nerfing a bunch of weapons and items, they removed a lot of the punch that many of these weapons packed and that players very much enjoyed, and now it has muddled the experience for many of them. And now they're trying to speak out against the developers, but seemingly they're not getting a response. So what have players resorted to? Now they have resorted to speaking out against the developers by not participating in the missions. So now there's an in-game boycott of sorts where players just aren't participating in the gameplay at all. And I've got a screenshot to share with you guys to demonstrate what's happening in the game. So as you can see, there's a little mini map here, and this is a core feature in Helldivers 2. You can take a look at this map to see who is being invaded by what faction, and from what players are describing in both the Steam reviews and in the forums and on X, they're not participating in the missions. They're just letting all these alien races make their way to Super Earth and destroy it because they don't know any other way that they can make these developers hear them out. Helldivers 2 players have made it known to them that they don't like this update, they don't like this change to this weapon, they don't like this change to that weapon, and every single time Arrowhead has said, no, we know better than you, stop complaining about it, just deal with it and move on. And as they've continued to do that, in addition to the community managers being absolute buttholes in the chats, a chain reaction has slowly slowly begun to develop, where players are not playing Helldivers 2 anymore. How many players did they gain in the last month? 1,700, but they've already lost so many more players, and it looks like it can't ever recover from these numbers unless somehow Arrowhead makes some crazy change. But what are the chances of that happening? I mean, let's be real, this is not the first time that they have made promises like this, but that has not stopped them from making the same promise twice. As you can see, Grums pointed that out today. Helldivers released a statement from their game director saying that they will listen more closely to players and reevaluate their approach to balance. The problem is they promised this before and went right back to the needless, endless nerfs and balances. Players are now doubting this means much. Time will tell, and he provided screenshots to which the Arrowhead team made promises that they have already claimed that they would keep in the past, but they have not been faithful to their fans. They just have not, and that's why so many of their fans have departed. They claim they'll continue to re-examine their approach to balance. Their intention is that balance should be fun, not balanced for the sake of balance, and yet so many developers follow that same formula and make so many of their players mad. It's fascinating, isn't it? How many more people want to play Black Myth Wukong than other games, especially like these big time games from Sony? Do you think that it's because Western games are just making players feel fatigued in general, or do you think that it's because players are finally waking up to the DEI nonsense and they're finally taking a stand and saying no? Well, if that is the case, then it would explain why Black Myth Wukong is so popular. It doesn't contain any of these woke elements. It doesn't try to intentionally make its characters androgynous or ugly to combat one sex or the other. It doesn't appear concerned with injecting LGBTQ+ or diversity, equity, and inclusion themes. It doesn't try to plant racism on one group of people or another. It doesn't try to undermine its male characters so that the female characters feel safer. It doesn't try to push a political message about fighting against capitalism and accepting socialism. It doesn't do any of these ridiculous things that the West has been trying to push for years, both in localization and in game development itself, and this problem is growing. But one mistake I think that people make a lot of the time is that they think that because dark and terrible things are growing in the gaming industry, that for some reason the good things are shrinking. No, I do believe that there are people in the gaming industry who are pushing back against this and are actually focused on making games that we care about. And there are more of them as time goes on. We just got to keep waking people up. But for those people who are awake in the industry, they are making moves, and these are the types of games that we should pay attention to. You can have whatever thoughts that you want about China and the CCP, and you can make your criticisms where you wish, but you have to also acknowledge at the same time that there are developers who actually care, and they are in China, they are in Japan, they are in Europe and America. There are people in every single country who just want to make entertaining games for people. Just pay close attention and you can point those people out and draw the line in the sand where you may, but I'm pretty sure that most people can agree that DEI games are not where it's at. Even the LGBTQ+ crowd is not responding to games like Concord and other Sweet Baby Ink-fueled video games. They're not responding to them. Alan Wake 2 still has yet to make a profit. It has not profited yet. But many people will try to lie to you and bring you false facts to make it seem like that's exactly the case. But on one end, there is gaslighting, and on the other end, there are gamers like Nadeshot here who are sort of making a connection but not bringing home what the real problem is, and instead blaming gamers for everything. We sure do see a lot of that these days, do we not? But this person points out what Nadeshot says, because Nadeshot is coming after gamers for being far too critical on today's video games, despite the fact that most of today's video games are rehashes or just trash pushing propaganda. But listen to what he says right here.
People complain about not having enough games to play, but when new games come out, even before they have played it, they're like, that game sucks, I'm not going to play it. Listen, man, if we keep tearing down these studios trying to make good games, like, yeah, not every single one is going to be fun and not every single one is going to be a hit. But if we're sitting here like preying on its downfall before the game even comes out, what do you think's going to happen? Nobody's going to be investing in gaming and making new games.
Well, he is right about one thing. If we stop playing these games and we keep talking negatively about them where it's justified, they will indeed stop making those games for people to play. And that's kind of the point. We don't want them to make these types of games. That's why we speak out against them and instead try to encourage real video games to be made like the ones that we used to play. And that's something that Nadeshot points out here. He points out how we all used to stand in line waiting waiting for games to come out, because back in the day, games were actually fun, completed, had good stories and characters and gameplay that was groundbreaking in some ways and memorable in other ways. But what he's wrong about is that gamers are hating on every single game that comes their way. That's not true at all. Mecha Break is doing really well, and guess what else is doing really well? Wukong. Wukong's benchmark, not even their game, not even their demo, got over 80,000 people, almost more people playing that benchmark than other people playing other Steam games. To say that gamers are coming after the video game industry without any remorse or mercy or any critical thought whatsoever is disingenuous. But again, it is fascinating. Black Myth Wukong, extremely popular. Mecha Break, extremely popular. Helldivers 2, well, it was extremely popular, and you could say even now that it's really popular because 25,000 people is still a lot of people playing the game. But that doesn't change the fact that they are still plummeting and headed in a very bad direction unless they fix things. But Helldivers 2 is still a miracle story. There are other developers who are not going to try and fix any issues, and they are going to go under. We've already seen plenty of that. I guess in the coming days, we'll see if that happens again. But in the meantime, that's all I've got for you guys in this video today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't had the chance to like it and share it with your friends, that would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing to my channel so that you're always up to date on what kind of thing I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Later. Meow meow.